So how do we show the heat waves? You're probably used to looking at the temperature map and so on and so forth. And so when Dr. Michael Mann and Lear Kump, there are lots of scientists doing this. In fact, Michael Mann and Lee Kump are not the main players in looking at heat waves. They generally look at changes in climate, which means they look into the future and say what may happen, like saying St. Louis, Missouri could have more than 40 continuous days of brutal temperatures. Why do they say could have? They are not saying St. Missouri will have 40 continuous days in the future of heat waves, brutal temperatures, because when you make projections into the future and you want to say something happening 10 years later, 20 years later and so on, we have to tell our climate model. Remember, like the traffic model we looked at, what will happen to our emissions, what will happen to our energy use, our population, and so on and so forth. But many people look at what has been happening already over St. Louis, Missouri, based on the data, historical temperature data, to say heat waves in fact are increasing. So it's not just the warming, the heat waves. Remember, warming is a slow thing. Every year it may increase by some small amount, which we said can appear too small, but amount of energy is very large. So it's not just a slow change in the background, which we call the chronic change. What is a chronic change for you? You will get older and older and older and older. That's a slow change over time. If you stay fit and eat well, you may look younger and younger and not look old very quickly like I do, right? But a quick change or a acute change is where the temperature jumps. Let's say someone got sick and suddenly they started looking much older and so on. Okay, just as an example. So think of a pot of water boiling on a stove. Water in the form of steam escapes into the air. The water level goes down. Leave the burner on for too long and the water will disappear. Only a burned pot is left, like parched, cracked ground here with the tree that has died away and just remains a stick. So when you keep taking out the water vapor, water that is in the soil called soil moisture, it becomes cracked, and like a dry skin it begins to look parched and cracked and so on. California was in a drought from about 2012 to 2016, and then it continued and continued, and one year it got lots of snow and rain and almost came out of a drought, but not quite. It was considered part of a 15-year mega drought, big drought that lingered across most of the western United States. Lake Mead, a reservoir that provides much of California's water, shrank. It shrank so much that lots of old things that were in the lake began to show up because the water levels had dropped so much. There are some crazy things that became visible that you don't want to listen to, hear about. In spring 2016 it dropped to a record low. It was just 37% full. It has a level when it's full. It was down to 37% of the full, which means 63% of the level had dropped off. Right? Evaporation. But does this mean it is all because of global warming alone? Not necessarily. You don't want to necessarily worry about this detail, but if you're old enough, you know that people are taking water out of the lakes and the ground for agriculture, for drinking, for industrial purposes and so on. All those things combined together with the warm temperatures. So the warm temperatures, thirsty atmosphere and increased evaporation are definitely one of the big causes. Plus, Lake Mead is a artificial lake in the sense it's a reservoir which is filled by capturing running river water. So if the rainfall over the river catchment, as we call it, right? It rains in many places, everything runs into the river gets full and starts running towards the ocean. So all that rain that collects into the river is called the catchment area rain. So if you reduce the rain over that catchment area, then the water coming into the Lake Mead decreases as well, which is what happened. One study found that California could face permanent drought conditions by 2050, due in part to human caused climate change. Again, we say could face, because this is a projection out to 2050, year 2050, but it's not that far for you. You will be young and looking at these changes unless we all do something about it. Okay, so here is a drop in the lake level in Lake Mead with a little boat still running around. The United States is not alone in this. Droughts have hit almost every continent. The consequences can be very harsh, as in the Lake Chad region of Africa. There are water shortages, failing farms, loss of income, and of course not enough food, which can lead to famine. So we are making changes everywhere, but let's say rich countries are emitting lots of greenhouse gases, and Lake Chad is a region of poor countries and they are paying a price as well. Okay, so you have to remember that. Now the question I had in the title, how do I see the heat waves? Sometimes in the newspaper you will see figures like this, which is showing a temperature map for April 17th to April 30th 2024, so a couple of weeks averaged. What does it show? It shows Indian Ocean is warm during this period and land is warm, and South Asia, Southeast Asia is very warm. Tibetan Plateau, which is high in the Himalayas, is cold, right? So you can see that it's not clear what is anomaly here, what is average here. So when you see this kind of a thing in the media, you tell your parents, I want to see the anomalies, deviations from what is expected or deviations from the climatologies. Unfortunately, many scientists are showing this, which is not a good idea. And here is the minimum temperature during April 17th to 30th, the same weeks. And you expect during the day there is a maximum temperature with the sun shining, and at night as sun goes down, temperatures will get colder. So you can see bluer colors here, colder temperatures than the average daily temperatures, and average maximum temperatures during the day will be warmer for sure. You can see brighter redder colors and less blue here and so on, but it still doesn't tell you whether this is normal or not. What do you want to do? You want to remove the climatology for this period. What do we expect over a long period, which we call climatology, and then you want to show the anomalies. And now you see the same period. If I take the anomaly with respect to a climatology over 2004 to 2023, which is about 20 years of average temperatures for this period of April 17th to April 30th, then 2024 was actually cooler than normal here over parts of India, warmer than normal here in northeastern part and or parts of Asia over here, and southern region of India was warmer than normal, and Tibetan Plateau was a mix of colder than and warmer than normal. Tells you a very different picture than this here, right? And also looks very different here when you look at minimum temperature anomalies for this period of April 17th to 30th, and it says the minimum temperature was colder than normal, colder than what we expect during the evenings, and it was much warmer than normal in terms of maximum temperatures, and even maximum temperatures were even cooler than normal. So winds were bringing some mix of air and humidity, which made Pakistan, Iran and parts of Afghanistan cooler than normal during this period, and parts of India and Southeast Asia and China and so on were warmer than normal. So when somebody shows you total temperatures like this, seasonal temperatures, you say, uncle, grandpa, show me the anomalies, because I know that anomalies will tell me more about where the heat waves are. This doesn't tell me where the heat waves are, Grandpa. Why are you showing me this? So you should call the scientists to show you the right thing. Okay, so that's a brief introduction to heat waves. Now you can do homework to see where you live. Is there a heat wave season? Are the heat waves increasing in number, or are they coming more often? Are they much more stronger, much more strong than before, more intense than before? Are they arriving earlier than the season, or are they arriving in a season, let's say in the fall, where there were no heat waves and now you are having heat waves because the winter is arriving later, spring is arriving earlier, and so on and so forth. Okay, you can always listen to this and then say, what is this old man saying? Let me see what's happening in my neighborhood. Let me see what my grandpa can tell me, whether this grandpa talking on YouTube is making sense or not. So you should always be curious about everything you listen to. Curiosity is the best way to learn, because you will ask questions if you're curious, and you will know more. Very important to know more and not believe everything I say, even though I'm supposed to be an expert in climate science. Okay, always ask, read, listen to others, and learn and follow science. Okay, see you in the next chapter, which is on why are there so many. So we are going to talk about heat waves. We already talked about extreme weather, and now we are going to talk about famine and fire. Okay, see you in the next chapter then, kiddos.